Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died.
Hold! Everything is clean for you.
Are you saying giving alms is more important than being ritually
I'm
clean?
saying that your obsession...
Ready? 1, 2, 3. Lazarus! Come out! We tithe everything so the poor can benefit, down to the smallest plants grown in our gardens.
And to that I say, woe to you Pharisees! You tithe...
I love you. I do not want to see you suffer. The Son of Man must suffer many things. No, I can't hear this. The prophet Isaiah gave you many warnings.
The wait is over, and The Chosen Season 6 Episode 1 is finally here, and let me tell you, this isn't just another episode. This is the beginning of the end. The story shifts into the darkest and most heartbreaking hours of Jesus' life. The hours that every believer knows but never stops feeling chills when hearing again. So here's what you need to know. Episode 1 of Season 6 dives straight into the trial of Jesus. And this isn't a lightweight courtroom scene. This is the moment where every friend, every follower, every person who once shouted Hosanna, now falls silent or even turns against him. The betrayal has already happened. Judas has played his role, and the guards have dragged Jesus from the Garden of Gethsemane, where he had just prayed that unforgettable prayer, "Not my will, but yours be done." That single moment already set the tone. Because Jesus isn't fighting back, he isn't trying to escape. He is walking willingly into pain. From there, the episode shows us the first phase of his trial. And it's brutal in its unfairness. Jesus is brought to Annas, a man who isn't even the official high priest anymore but still has power and influence. And Annas starts pressing Jesus with questions. He wants to know about his disciples, about his teachings, like he's trying to catch him slipping. But here's the thing, Jesus doesn't play his game. He answers with quiet strength. He says, "I have spoken openly to the world. I always taught in synagogues or at the temple where all the Jews come together. I said nothing in secret." Basically, he's saying, "Why are you asking me this? Everyone knows what I've said." That's when one of the guards steps forward and smacks him across the face. Just imagine that, striking the man who came to save the world. That single act sets the whole tone of humiliation and violence. That's going to hang over this season, but it doesn't stop there. Annas sends him to Caiaphas, and this is where things get even heavier. Caiaphas pulls together the Sanhedrin, this council of religious leaders, and they try to find people who will testify against Jesus. But the problem is, their stories don't line up. It's lie after lie, contradiction after contradiction. They're desperate, trying to build a case, but it's falling apart. And in the middle of all this chaos, Jesus just stands there, silent, calm, not defending himself, not fighting back, because he knows that no words are going to change what's already written. Then it happens, the moment that seals his fate. Caiaphas turns to Jesus and demands, "Tell us if you are the Messiah, the Son of God." And Jesus replies with words that cut through the room like fire. He says, "You have said so. But I tell you, from now on, you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the Mighty One and coming on the clouds of heaven." That's it. That's the statement that Caiaphas can twist into blasphemy. He rips his robes, he shouts that Jesus has spoken against God, and suddenly the council screams for death. But here's the problem, they can't kill him themselves. They need Rome, they need Pilate. So the wheels start turning to drag Jesus into the political system, where the fate of his body will be decided. And here's where the tension gets so real you can feel it in your chest. Because Pilate doesn't want to deal with this. Pilate is a man caught between his own conscience and the demands of a bloodthirsty crowd. He looks at Jesus and sees no crime. He questions him, even asks if he's the king of the Jews, and when Jesus answers, "You say that I am," Pilate is stuck. He knows this isn't a criminal. But the crowd outside is shouting louder and louder, and the religious leaders are pressing harder. So Pilate, trying to get out of it, sends him to Herod. And Herod just wants a show. He wants a miracle, some magic trick. But Jesus gives him nothing. No words, no signs. Just silence. So Herod mocks him, dresses him up in a robe, and sends him right back to Pilate. By the end of episode 1, the stage is set for the unthinkable. The leaders want blood, Pilate wants peace, and the crowd wants a crucifixion. And Jesus? He's walking through it all, not because he has to, but because he chose to. Episode 1 is the opening of the darkest chapter of The Chosen yet. And you can already feel the weight pressing down on every word, every silence, and every strike. Now, here's where things in episode 1 really start to twist the knife. Pilate is stuck in the middle of the storm, and you can almost feel the tension choking him. On one side, he's staring at Jesus, a man who's calm, silent, and clearly not guilty of any crime worth death. On the other side, the religious leaders and the crowd are growing louder, demanding blood. And Pilate does what politicians have always done: he tries to push the problem away. That's why he sends Jesus to Herod, hoping Herod will deal with it. But like we already saw, Herod only wanted entertainment. When he didn't get what he wanted, he mocked Jesus and tossed him back to Pilate. That means Pilate can't avoid the choice anymore. He's stuck with it. And here's the heartbreaking part: Pilate actually tries to do the right thing. He comes out and tells the crowd he doesn't find Jesus guilty of anything. He even says it multiple times, almost like he's begging them to see reason. But the crowd isn't listening. The leaders are stoking the fire, turning the people against Jesus. And suddenly this mob is screaming like wild animals. "Crucify him! Crucify him!" The words echo, getting louder, pressing Pilate into a corner. And that's when he thinks of one last move. One desperate attempt to save Jesus without losing the crowd. He remembers the Passover custom, where one prisoner could be released. So he sets it up like a test. On one side, Jesus the teacher, the healer, the man who never raised a sword. On the other side, Barabbas, a known criminal, a violent man, someone with real blood on his hands. Surely the crowd will see the difference, right? Surely they'll ask for Jesus to be freed, but no. That's the twist that hits you in the gut every single time. The crowd chooses Barabbas. They scream for his release, and they scream for Jesus' death. And Pilate, this Roman governor who could have stopped it all, caves under the pressure. He washes his hands in front of everyone, saying he's innocent of Jesus' blood, but deep down, we all know he isn't. That's the thing: washing your hands doesn't wash away guilt. And just when you think the horror has peaked, it gets worse. Because before Pilate hands Jesus over, he orders him to be flogged. And I need you to understand, this wasn't just a few lashes with a whip. This was brutality designed to break a man before killing him. The Roman flogging was so violent that people sometimes died from it alone. The whip wasn't just leather strips, it had pieces of metal and bone tied into it, designed to tear into skin and muscle. Every strike would cut deeper, ripping flesh open. By the time it was over, Jesus' body would have been shredded, bleeding, and barely standing. And this is all before the crucifixion even begins. After the flogging, the soldiers decide to mock him. They weave together a crown of thorns, sharp enough to pierce through skin, and they jam it onto his head. They throw a purple robe over his torn-up back, and they kneel down in fake worship, spitting out the words, "Hail, King of the Jews," as they hit him again and again. It's cruel, it's humiliating, and yet through it all, Jesus doesn't fight back. He doesn't scream for mercy. He takes it. Not because he's weak, but because he's carrying something no one else can. And while all this is happening, think about what his followers are doing. Peter, the man who swore he'd never deny him, has already broken down 3 times, swearing he doesn't even know Jesus. The disciples are scattered, hiding, afraid. Mary is watching with her heart shattered, unable to stop the nightmare unfolding in front of her. This is the part of the story where everything looks lost, where hope feels crushed under the weight of injustice. And episode 1 leans into that hopelessness. It forces us to sit with it, to feel it, to recognize just how much Jesus was willing to endure. By the end of this episode, you're left in that chilling space between condemnation and crucifixion. Jesus has been sentenced. Pilate has handed him over. The soldiers have mocked and beaten him. The crowd has chosen Barabbas. And now the journey to the cross begins. Episode 1 doesn't give us comfort. It doesn't wrap things up neatly. It leaves us standing in the shadows of betrayal, denial, and injustice, knowing that the worst is still to come. And that's why it's so powerful, because it sets the stage for a story that isn't just about suffering, but about sacrifice, love, and a victory that no one could see coming yet. The thing about episode 1 of season 6 is that it doesn't give you space to breathe. The pace is heavy, and every scene feels like it's pressing down on you with the weight of history. We've already seen Jesus condemned by the religious leaders, handed over by Pilate, and mocked by soldiers. But this is just the beginning of what he has to endure. The walk toward the cross hasn't even started yet, and already his body is breaking under the punishment. His silence is almost louder than the shouts of the crowd. And that silence, that choice not to fight back, makes this episode hit harder than anything we've seen before. Think about it. From the very first season, The Chosen has been showing us Jesus as someone approachable, kind, and full of compassion. He healed, he laughed, he told stories, he gathered people in with love. But now, in season 6, episode 1, that same man is stripped of everything. His friends are gone. His dignity is mocked, and his body is being torn apart. Yet even here, he doesn't lose his authority. His strength isn't in raising a sword or arguing his way out, it's in enduring, in choosing the path no one else could carry. And that's where this episode grabs you by the heart, because it's not just the physical pain. It's the betrayal. Judas, one of his closest followers, has already sold him out for silver. Peter, who swore he'd never deny him, has already broken down, claiming 3 times that he doesn't even know him. Imagine the sting of that, your best friend, the one who promised loyalty, collapsing under fear when you need him the most. And it's not just Peter. The other disciples are scattered, hiding, too afraid to stand by him. That's what makes this trial so much heavier. Jesus is standing alone. Alone before the council, alone before Pilate, alone before the crowd. That loneliness is almost worse than the beatings. But here's the detail that makes episode 1 unforgettable: the crowd. The same people who once followed him, who once shouted Hosanna in the highest, are now screaming for his death. They don't just want him silenced, they want him destroyed. And that switched the way people can turn from love to hate. When fear and power are pulling the strings, that's a reflection of humanity at its darkest. The Chosen doesn't soften that. It forces us to see it. The mob mentality, the manipulation by leaders, the ugliness of people when they want someone to blame. That's what makes watching this episode so unsettling. Because deep down, you know it's not just history. It's human nature. And then there's Pilate. His role in this episode is one of the most fascinating. Because he's not a villain in the way Caiaphas is, but he's no hero either. He's the man who had the power to stop it and didn't. He keeps repeating, "I find no fault in him." But at the same time, he's too weak to act on it. That moment when he washes his hands in front of the crowd feels like a cop-out. It's him trying to escape responsibility, but history doesn't let him off that easy. His name will always be tied to this trial. Episode 1 shows us that perfectly, how sometimes evil doesn't win because of strong enemies, but because of weak leaders who refuse to stand firm. And here's where the tension builds even more. After the flogging, after the mocking, Pilate tries again. He brings Jesus out in front of the crowd, bloodied, wearing the crown of thorns and the purple robe, hoping they'll look at him and feel pity. Pilate says, "Behold the man," as if presenting his suffering will be enough to satisfy their anger. But instead of mercy, the crowd only screams louder, "Crucify him!" Over and over, no pity, no compassion, just raw hatred. And that's the moment you realize nothing can stop what's coming next. By the time episode 1 closes, Jesus has been sentenced beyond escape. The decision is final. The leaders have won their false trial, the crowd has chosen Barabbas, and Pilate has surrendered his conscience for peace. The soldiers are ready, the cross is waiting, and the road to Golgotha is about to begin. That's the cliffhanger this episode leaves you with. It's not a resolution. It's not a comfort. It's the crushing weight of inevitability. And yet, in that darkness, there's still a flicker of something more. Because even as Jesus is mocked and beaten, there's this unshakable sense that he's not a victim. He's in control. Every silence, every word, every step is intentional. That's what makes the story so different. Anyone else would have begged for mercy, but Jesus isn't begging. He's carrying the burden of humanity, carrying the cost of sin, carrying a mission no one else could complete. And as the credits roll on episode 1, you know that the story is only going to get heavier, only going to get more brutal, but also that the payoff will be greater than anything this world has ever seen. By the time we hit the latter half of episode 1, the atmosphere has shifted from courtroom chaos to something even darker. The trial is over, the verdict is sealed, and now Jesus is handed over to the Roman soldiers for execution. And this is where the cruelty gets personal. The Sanhedrin wanted him silenced, Pilate wanted him gone, but the soldiers? They wanted sport. They weren't just carrying out an order, they were entertaining themselves at his expense. This is the part that makes your stomach turn, because it isn't about politics anymore. It's raw human evil on display. They take Jesus into the governor's headquarters, surround him with a whole cohort of soldiers, and let loose. They strip him down, and we're reminded again how vulnerable he is. No defense, no shield, no escape. They press that twisted crown of thorns deeper into his head, making sure every sharp edge digs into his skin. Blood drips down his face while they laugh and mock him like it's all a big joke. "Hail, King of the Jews!" they shout, bowing down in fake worship, spitting on him, striking him over and over. The Chosen doesn't hold back here. It doesn't soften the brutality or turn the moment into a quick passing scene. No, this is stretched, this is slow, because it's meant to hurt. It's meant to show us just how far Jesus was willing to go without fighting back. And what really gets under your skin is that he takes it all in silence. He doesn't curse them, doesn't call down fire, doesn't even try to stop them. He absorbs the full weight of their hate, standing in the middle of their cruelty with nothing but quiet strength. But what makes this part of episode 1 so haunting isn't just what's happening to Jesus, it's what's happening around him. Where are his friends? Where are the ones he healed, the ones he taught, the ones who said they believed in him? They're gone, scattered, afraid. The disciples, who had seen him calm storms and raise the dead, are nowhere near the courtyard. Peter has already denied him 3 times, and the rooster's crow is still echoing in his mind. Judas has vanished into the shadows after betraying him, carrying the weight of his own guilt. The silence of those who once swore loyalty is almost louder than the shouts of the soldiers. And yet, The Chosen does something powerful here. It forces us to sit with the loneliness of Jesus. The camera doesn't cut away. The story doesn't let us escape it. Because that's part of the point. He had to endure this alone. No one could share the burden. No one could step in and take his place. It was always going to be him. That realization is what makes watching this episode almost unbearable. Then comes Pilate again, trying to wiggle his way out one last time. After Jesus has been flogged and mocked, Pilate drags him back out before the crowd. Picture it, Jesus standing there, bloodied, crowned with thorns, his body beaten almost beyond recognition. Pilate raises his hand and says, "Behold the man." It's like he's saying, "Look, haven't we done enough? Isn't this enough punishment?" But the crowd doesn't back down. Instead of pity, they roar even louder, "Crucify him! Crucify him!" The leaders push the people harder, stirring the frenzy, until it's a tidal wave of rage Pilate can't control. This is where the weakness of Pilate is fully exposed. He has the authority to release Jesus, but he's afraid of losing his position, afraid of the riot brewing outside, and fear makes him surrender. He symbolically washes his hands in front of everyone, claiming innocence. But we know the truth: his hands will forever be stained by this choice. History remembers him as the man who condemned Jesus, even while admitting he was innocent. That's the tragedy of Pilate's role, and episode 1 makes sure we feel the weight of that cowardice. By now, the path is set. Jesus is handed over to be crucified. The soldiers seize him again, and the episode takes us right to the edge of the road that leads to Golgotha. You can almost feel the dust, hear the iron clinking of nails being prepared, sense the shadow of the cross looming just ahead. But the brilliance of this first episode is that it doesn't rush to the crucifixion. It leaves us suspended in this unbearable tension. Jesus has been condemned, beaten, and mocked, but the cross hasn't appeared yet. That's for what's coming. The closing moments of episode 1 leave you with that deep, hollow feeling in your chest. It's the realization that everything has been set in motion and nothing can stop it now. The betrayal, the denial, the trial, the beating, it has all led to this. And while everyone else thinks they're in control, the priests, the crowd, even Pilate, the truth is, Jesus is the only one who truly knows what's happening. He's not a victim of chance. He's walking into destiny. That's what makes episode 1 of season 6 so unforgettable. It doesn't give you comfort, doesn't give you miracles, doesn't give you a quick escape. It leaves you in the heaviness of the story, forcing you to carry the weight of what's coming next. And you know deep down that the road to the cross has only just begun. The road to Golgotha begins. And from the very first step, you can feel the crushing weight of what's about to happen. Jesus, beaten and bloodied, is forced to carry the very cross that will be used to kill him. The wooden beams dig into his torn flesh, pressing against fresh wounds from the flogging. Every stumble, every slow step feels like the earth itself is holding its breath. The Chosen makes you sit in that tension. You don't just watch him walk. You feel the exhaustion in your own bones. The soldiers aren't patient. They shove him, whip him, scream at him to move faster. To them, it's just another execution. But to the people lining the streets, it's a spectacle. Some watch with pity, some with hate, and others with a numb detachment. The same voices that once cried out for his miracles now stand silent or worse. They're the same ones screaming, "Crucify him." Earlier. That's what betrayal looks like on a massive scale, not just from Judas, not just from Peter, but from an entire crowd that once followed him. And in the middle of this chaos, there are small moments that pierce deeper than the shouting. A mother's face in the crowd, stricken with grief. Mary, watching her son collapse under the weight of the cross, powerless to help. The pain on her face speaks louder than words ever could. For a mother to see her child humiliated, tortured, and dragged through the streets, it's almost too much to witness. But The Chosen doesn't shy away from it. It forces us to stand right there beside her, watching the unthinkable unfold. Then comes Simon of Cyrene, a man pulled from the crowd, forced by the soldiers to carry the cross when Jesus collapses again. At first, Simon resists. Why should he be dragged into this nightmare? But the moment he takes hold of that cross, everything changes. He feels the weight, sees the blood, and locks eyes with Jesus. That single moment transforms him. Because even in the midst of his own suffering, Jesus looks at Simon with a kind of strength, a kind of peace that no one else on that road had. It's the look of someone who knows exactly where he's going and why. That look breaks Simon, and at the same time, it builds him. He may be carrying the wood, but it's Jesus carrying the true burden. The crowd follows along, growing louder as they approach the place of execution. The whispers, the taunts, the cruel laughter, it all swirls together into a storm of noise. But beneath the noise, the chosen leaves you with this unshakable silence inside. You know what's coming. The hammer, the nails, the cross raised high. But the show doesn't rush into it. It lingers on the road, on the brokenness of each step. Because this is where the real weight of the story sinks in. The crucifixion isn't just about death, it's about the journey toward it. And that journey is heavy. Meanwhile, the disciples remained scattered in fear. Some peek from a distance, torn between wanting to run to him and being too afraid to be recognized. Peter, especially, carries the sting of denial. His guilt is unbearable, and yet he still can't bring himself to stand beside Jesus in public. It's this crushing reminder that even the strongest promises can break under fear. The ones who swore they'd never abandon him are nowhere near his side when he needs the most. And Judas? He's vanished into his own darkness, his betrayal echoing louder with each passing moment. But here's the twist: the chosen leans into this looks like the darkest road. But it's also the beginning of something bigger. The soldiers think they're breaking him down. The leaders think they're silencing him. The crowd thinks they're winning. But every step closer to Golgotha is Jesus taking control, not losing it. He's not being dragged against his will. He's walking into his destiny. That's what flips the entire episode on its head. The appearance of defeat is actually the setup for the ultimate victory. As the scene builds, you can almost hear the sound of hammers in the distance, waiting for him. You can almost feel the shadow of the cross looming taller with every moment. And yet, Jesus doesn't resist. He doesn't beg. He doesn't curse his enemies. He walks. Bruised, broken, but unshaken in his purpose. And that's what makes this section of the story so chilling. Because deep down, we know what's next, and still, it's unbearable to imagine. The episode closes this section of the road with an eerie calm. The soldiers march ahead, the crowd pushes behind, and Jesus' blood dripping, body shaking, keeps moving forward. There's no turning back, no more trials, no more bargaining. Only the cross, only the hill, only the end everyone thinks they've chosen for him. But the truth? He's the one choosing every step. That's how The Chosen Season 6, Episode 1 keeps its grip on you. It doesn't just show you a man going to die. It shows you the weight of the world pressing down on him and the strength it takes to keep moving when everything and everyone is against you. The hill comes into view, Golgotha, the place of the skull, from a distance. It's just a rocky rise outside the city walls. But as the soldiers lead Jesus closer, it becomes something else entirely. It's not just a hill, it's the stage where the world is about to change forever. And the weight of that moment hangs heavy in the air, thick enough to choke on Jesus. Already pushed beyond human endurance, collapses again under the shadow of the cross. His body is battered, torn, shaking from blood loss, but the soldiers don't care. To them, he's nothing more than another execution. They drag him forward, pull Simon away from the wood, and begin preparing the instruments of death. And that's when the hammer first comes into sight. The metal gleams in the sunlight, a weapon of finality. And you can almost hear the silence of the crowd deepen. Everyone knows what's coming next. The chosen doesn't rush here. It slows everything down, almost unbearably. The soldiers rip the clothes from his body, casting lots for his garments like vultures dividing prey. The sound of dice hitting the ground cuts through the air, cold and cruel. Then they lay him down on the cross, rough wood against torn flesh, arms stretched wide. And without warning, the first strike of the hammer lands. The sound echoes like thunder, each blow tearing through not just his hands but through the hearts of everyone watching. Blood splatters, flesh tears, and the reality of crucifixion hits hard. This isn't symbolic. This isn't quick. This is agony drawn out in every pounding strike, and still Jesus doesn't resist. His cries aren't of anger or hate. He takes the nails without curse, without rage. Every hit of the hammer becomes a chilling reminder he's choosing this. He could have stopped it. He could have ended it. But he didn't. He let the hammer fall. As the cross is lifted high and dropped into the ground, the sound of wood slamming into stone shakes the earth beneath their feet. Jesus hangs there, suspended between heaven and earth, mocked by some, mourned by few. The soldiers laugh, the leaders gloat, the crowd stares. But above all the noise, there's this strange, piercing calm. Jesus looks down, not with hatred, not with defeat, but with eyes that carry something unshakable. Mercy. And this is where the chosen twists the knife in your heart. While the world thinks it has broken him, he speaks. Through bloodied lips, through the weight of nails. He whispers words that no one could expect. Father, forgive them, forgive them. The very people hammering the nails, spitting insults, mocking his pain, he asks for their forgiveness. That's the kind of moment that cuts deeper than the nails ever could. Because it forces us to ask, who else would do that? Who else could? Around the cross, the reactions vary. Some turn away, unable to stomach the sight. Others jeer louder, feeling victorious. Mary weeps at the foot of the cross, her grief almost unbearable, while John stands beside her, silent but steadfast. The disciples, scattered and broken, linger in the shadows, too afraid to step forward but too shattered to turn away completely. The weight of their absence is heavy, almost louder than the mocking of the crowd. And then there's the sky. The Chosen captures this subtle shift, the sunlight dimming, shadows stretching long, the atmosphere itself changing as if creation can't bear to watch. Darkness begins to creep across the land, foreshadowing the storm that's about to break. Nature itself seems to groan under the weight of what's happening. The crucifixion isn't just an execution. It's the center of history. And the heavens know it. Episode 1 ends not with resolution, not with peace, but with raw tension. Jesus hangs on the cross, his body broken, his breath labored, but his spirit unbroken. The camera doesn't cut away. The story doesn't soften. It leaves us staring at the impossible God in human form, nailed to wood, dying for those who despised him. And just before the screen fades, the rumble of thunder rolls across the sky, signaling that this is only the beginning. The crucifixion isn't over. The story isn't finished. And what comes next will shake the earth itself. That's how The Chosen Season 6 Episode 1 grips you. It doesn't give you relief, doesn't give you answers. It leaves you on the hill, staring at the cross, knowing the full weight of what's happening but powerless to stop it. And the question hangs heavy in the silence: if this is how the story begins, how much more will it cost before it's finished? The world goes silent. That's the only way to describe it. The air feels heavy, like creation itself is holding its breath, waiting for what comes next. Jesus has just been handed over, and while the soldiers are preparing for the crucifixion, his followers are scattered. Some are hiding, some are watching from a distance, and some are frozen in fear. You can almost feel the weight pressing down on them. Because this isn't just about losing their teacher. It feels like the hope of everything they believed in is slipping away. For 3 years they followed him, trusted him, believed he was the Messiah who would change everything. And now, here he is, beaten, mocked, dragged through the streets, about to be nailed to a cross like a criminal. If you were standing there, what would you think? Would you still believe, or would doubt crush you the same way it's crushing the disciples? That tension is what makes this episode so haunting. But here's the part that chills me the most: Jesus isn't fighting it. He isn't resisting, he isn't begging Pilate for another chance. He isn't even trying to prove his innocence anymore. He's walking into this willingly, step by step, like he's carrying something so much heavier than the wooden cross they're about to lay on his back. It's the weight of sin, the full burden of humanity's brokenness. And the disciples can't see it yet. They only see the humiliation, the pain, the injustice. They don't realize that the very thing that looks like defeat is the moment that will break the curse forever. That's the kind of layered storytelling that makes this season unlike anything else. Even the crowd is split. Some people are furious, yelling for crucifixion like their lives depend on it. Others are confused, unsettled, wondering why this man who healed the sick, gave sight to the blind, and even raised the dead is being treated like this. But nobody is speaking up anymore. Fear has silenced them. Think about Peter for a second. Just hours ago, he swore he would never deny Jesus, and yet under the pressure of the night, under the threat of being associated with him, he broke. He denied knowing the very man he once called Lord. That guilt, that shame, it's eating him alive while Jesus is dragged closer and closer to Golgotha. And you know Peter will never forget it. Now imagine Mary, standing in the crowd. This isn't just a follower watching her rabbi suffer. This is a mother watching her son. Every slap, every insult, every drop of blood, she feels it like it's her own. And yet, she doesn't look away. She can't, because deep down, even in the heartbreak, she knows there's something bigger happening. She might not understand it fully, but she refuses to leave him alone in this moment. That's the kind of silent strength that cuts deeper than any words. This is where the episode pushes us into a corner. You can't watch this and stay comfortable. You either feel the crushing despair of thinking all hope is lost, or you start to sense that maybe, just maybe, this is what victory looks like in disguise. Dallas Jenkins and his team aren't just telling us what happened, they're making us live inside that confusion, that grief, that unbearable tension. And the question that hangs in the air is this: if everything ends on a cross, what was it all for? That's the cliffhanger this first episode leaves us with. And it sets the stage for a season that isn't just powerful, it's life-changing.